Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever in the world you are. So welcome to probably the most difficult tutorial that I've ever put together. What is the topic today? Well, it's baking in Horizon Worlds. So we're going to be going through direct and indirect lighting today. So that's, in layman's terms, that is shadows and emissions. So if you want to create sort of amazing maps that sort of have lovely shadows stretching across the floor in ways that is just not possible using sort of in-engine lighting systems, and that's what we're going to learn today. I'll be teaching Horizon Worlds specific material and image arrangement. Why is that important? Because these things are just not explained at the moment. No one is really covering this. There's a lot of tutorials around this form of baking. They're quite difficult to follow, and very difficult to follow. In fact, I've been to a lot myself, and I gotta be honest, it was pain, and I didn't really learn much. So that's why I'm making this video, is to try and give you guys a bit of a leg up, so that you can create amazing looking worlds, if you so desire. So today it won't be the best or most optimized workflow, but it's definitely easiest to get you started. I won't be teaching basic Blender usage on this. This will be quite advanced stuff. I have done a lot of previous videos on Blender usage for Horizon Worlds creators. Please feel free to check them out. So if this is all, if I'm going through it too quickly, perhaps in certain areas, it's because I'm sort of assuming that you, the viewer, have already a decent backing in Blender in terms of object arrangement. And so please do look those up. Just a quick mention, it does take me a lot of time to prepare, record and edit these things, and also go through the motions in learning these sorts of things to pass on to you. So please do hit that button below. Also consider a subscribe, it's free, and I'll be making more of these kinds of videos in future, so you might be useful to you. Also, what would really help me is please name drop me everywhere. You know, if these things help you, and someone else is expressing an interest in some of the skills that you're learning here, and they say, wow, I really like what you've done, where'd you learn it? Just please point them to my channel, and I'll be making more. And like I said, if you've got any questions you want to ask, I'll do my best. Put something in the comments. By no means am I an expert in these things, but I've got enough knowledge to be dangerous and pass it on to you lot. So, without any further ado, let's move on. So onto the section 2, the baking primer. So basically, what is baking? Well, that's a term used for a lot of different things. In essence, it involves setting something up in Blender in this case, to pre-bake a load of stuff. So specifically, what I mean by that, this is quite difficult to explain in abstract. If you were to import a scene into Horizons, and you wanted to create really nice shadows sort of across the floor, an in-game lighting engine, it just can't do that quickly. So you basically set your 3D studio, if you like, your Blender, to work for a small amount of time, or a large amount of time as the case may be, to kind of pre-calculate where all those shadows are, where all the lights are coming from, which surfaces they're bouncing off, and how they look as they sort of permeate through your scene. So there are different kinds of baking. I think probably next week or the week after I'll be covering PBR baking, which is a very different kind of baking. I won't explain that here. I think that's going to be more useful to you guys. But this, why I'm going to teach you here, if you pull this off, it looks absolutely gorgeous. It'll really make your scenes the talk of the town if you can master this stuff. So this is light baking, direct and indirect lighting, which just purely focuses on, shadows and light sources and how we actually bake that into the textures. So when you produce your models for upload, they're all pre-lit, basically. You've got all the shadows actually etched into the textures that you upload. It's very clever. But it's quite heavy. It takes a lot of processing. We'll cover that a little bit later on. So there are some great examples of people who have done light baking exceptionally in Horizon Worlds right now, and they're worlds that you can visit. So you've got, for example, RexRod's worlds you can check out, like the Nexus, the Might Club, or the Cliffside Metahome. Absolutely exemplary work. You can see, if you pay attention to the way the light spreads throughout the world, with the glows under the steps, the shadows, etc. You'll see it all. It's absolutely amazing. And also, you know, more recently we've had Joe Bear and Pinata have done some sterling work on this. They've really knocked it out the park. They've got all the, from Pinata's apartment to Joe Bear's sort of Tuscan sun world. That's one you need to check out for sure. I mean, to be honest, look at them all. They're all absolutely fantastic. But there's not many people on Horizons that are doing this right now. But the ones that are, their stuff stands out. So if you want to be in that sort of game, pay attention. It's coming up. Right, so let's get on with it. So, also today I launched a world called the Yoga Studio, which is, to be honest, I spent not much time learning light baking. It's going to get better, but it does give you some really great examples in there as to what I've managed to do. It is quite a simple scene, and the reasons for that will become obvious. But if you look at particularly the curtains that divide the dark room from the light room, you will absolutely see, you'll see some sort of fancy shadowing that is just not possible using static lighting. And again, I'll add in some more things as well, just to sort of differentiate static lighting from pre-baked when I have a bit more time. So keep an eye on that one. There will be changes. It's going to get better. You never just make a world and then drop it and leave it. You maintain it as you go on. That's a good workflow. So right, let's move on to light baking. Why is it good? Well, we've just sort of discussed it makes your worlds look amazing. You're benefiting from using pre-calculated lighting with this take, you know, potentially hours, sometimes even maybe, let's say, days. I've not pushed it that far yet, but a lot of time to physically simulate light beams hitting things, shadows being cast, being baked into sort of 4K textures or more if you're hungry for it. And that is, it looks really great when you step into a world that uses that. You can almost, in some parts, squint, and it looks lifelike because of the way the lighting's been done. It almost doesn't matter how complex the scene is, that the fact that the light, if it's arranged correctly, just bounces off things and is so smooth. It can really trick your brain into thinking that scene is real. So it's definitely a good thing to have under your belt, even if you don't use it all the time. Why is it bad? Actually, let's stick with why is it good again. Also, because to put all your lights pre-baked is very processor friendly. Because you've got all your light pre-baked, which means the real-time engine isn't having to work out how to draw the lighting in the scene, because you're using unlit textures. It's just crazy, right? It means that when you import these things, and we'll cover this a bit further down the line, when you import these things, you're basically importing them as unlit, and you're turning off. Well, you're not trying to light them in world. I mean, that would be insane. You've already pre-baked the lighting. You don't need to separate. You have in-game engine lighting going on as well on the world. You still need to cover that with avatar lighting, and that's another thing that we'll go into in a bit. So, why is it bad? Well, that's a good question again. Of course it is. Pre-baking takes a lot of effort. It's quite technical, and you need a lot of time. Imagine you've just gone through a 4K production ready bake, and you're ready to upload, and you've noticed you've screwed up somewhere. You've let a random shadow where it doesn't belong. You've messed something up in the scene. Well, unfortunately now, and there are ways you can work around it, but ultimately you could be looking at a rebake. So you've just finished a 4-hour bake on your scene. Your GPU's been spinning up for 4 hours producing all the textures, and then you have to correct something fairly significant you didn't spot before. That's a nightmare, because then ultimately, you're gonna have to do it all again. But that's one bad point. A second bad point is that if you wanted real-time lighting in your scene, well, because you've pre-baked the lighting, that's just not compatible. You can't add real-time lighting to you can't do it. It's not a thing. Plus, even if you did import them as just standard textures and not unlit textures, they would look weird, man. You've got all the shadows pre-baked and the lights pre-baked, and then you're trying to add extra lighting on top of it with like vertex lighting or dynamic lighting. It looks bad. Just you try it if you don't believe me, but it's not good. I won't be showing you how to do that on this because it's pointless. And so okay. So moving on, baking. Baking is difficult. It does require a lot of setup, as we covered in the bad. And I would say that when you're setting up a scene to use baking, you would have baking in mind from the get-go. It's not something I think, put in after you've really made quite a complex scene. I think it's something you intentionally build a scene to be baked from the start. So, for example, if you already have a club with like 3,000 objects in it, I wouldn't advise you go and try and reverse engineer it to put baking in. I don't know how well that would go. I mean, it could be fun, but yes, as you'll see, that could also be an absolute nightmare. So I think you have to budget what you bake in terms of what hardware you've got at your disposal, how much time you're prepared to put into setting up all the surfaces, etc., ready for baking. So yeah, baking does take a long time, especially with complex scenes. And I would definitely start simple. So we're going to go through a very small example today of just a handful of objects, just to show you how long even that would take. Which it won't be long with a handful of objects, but when you start going into actually creating scenes, you'll see that those times will go up. Also, another thing, baking is not an exact art. Someone asked me a while back, they said that, how do I bake? And it's like, well, I can't tell you in a sentence how you bake. I can show you the ropes, but in terms of what you're trying to bake, there's a lot of nuances to it, like how you group objects together to get the best usage of the textures and the images that you output. And it takes a lot of tweaking. You've got to get your lights just right. You're looking for something that looks amazing. That's what you're going for. So you've got to sort of organize your scene correctly and use the right levels, light levels, radiuses, powers, etc. So we'll go through a little bit of that today. I hope you guys have got a cup of tea on standby, because you're going to need it. I'm going to need it. Okay, so let's move on to section 3 without any further ado, guys. So, tools we'll be using. So the tools we'll be using today will be, I'm going to call it a good desktop GPU. So this will be a graphics card of some kind. I'm using the NVIDIA 4050 myself, which is, it's okay. It's probably these days a benchmark, but entry level sort of graphics card. But it's in a laptop. I don't have a render farm. I don't have a souped up gaming PC, but it can handle itself. So I would say if you don't have a GPU, I would stop right here, because CPU baking, it is possible. That we'll cover why that's a terrible idea in the sort of that common pitfalls section. Actually, I'll give you an example right now. So when I set a scene baking at sort of 4 or 5 objects, it ran for 7 hours on a CPU bake, trying to generate 4K textures, and it was only about 40% of the way there when I woke up the next morning. It was at that point that I realized I should have set the GPU flag, and I didn't. So make sure you're doing that. But just as a general sort of drop, I would absolutely do this on a GPU, not a CPU. And we'll go through the setup of that. Next, you're going to need a few textures. Now, I bought a pack of textures, which has done me well, called the 500 PBR textures. There's 500 really good textures in there, which are fine for using in these projects. So I'll put a link out there. But honestly, there's a lot of texture sites you get textures from. Do always buy your textures, okay, or make them yourselves. There's a lot of places that you can get free textures as well, but just make sure you're licensed right to use them. Okay, so also Blender is pretty much fundamental to this. So I think I'm running Blender 4.2 at the moment. I'm unsure of the minor version of that, but yeah, Blender 4.2 is the one that we're running on, and we'll go through in this tutorial. And last of all, SimpleBake. Wow, a long one. But while I was doing my research on this one, I found that all roads seem to lead to SimpleBake, and SimpleBake it's an unofficial add-on. It's available from Blender Marketplace, I believe. Let me just look that up. Blendermarket.com. It's available from blendermarket.com. It's really, really cool. So setting up baking in Blender natively, you can do it. But if you go off and watch any of these tutorials, I guarantee you they will confuse the hell out of you. And then the next thing you face is how to do that for every single mesh in your scene. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure a lot of people do it that way. But Simple Bake does tie it together and add in a lot of accelerators that are going to get you generating your bakes much quicker. And I'll also be doing next week's PBR Bake using Simple Bake as well. And I'll cover those reasons why. So next week I'll be doing the PBR bakes. I'll also be doing that in Simple Bake as well. Simple Bake, despite being called Simple Bake, it does make the process easier, but it still does need a foundational knowledge of what baking is and how to set it up. And hopefully I'm going to give you all that in this session today. So Simple Bake does cost $20, but it's absolutely worth every penny, because I've seen what the alternative is, and the time that you'll save in even doing this on one scene is going to be like, yeah, it's just worth $20. It's a great project. It's still very much active. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, guys, without any further ado, we're going to move on to, step 4, my method. So this is something that I've repeated over and over throughout the last week. As I said, baking is not an exact art. There's a lot to it. So I'm hoping this one serves you well, as it served me well so far. There might be refinements to this process, and I'll add these in due time, but for now, it works. So here we go. Blender. We just summon Blender behind us. Great. Okay, so we can start off by, and this is a brand new scene, so this is kind of what you see when you load Blender, of course. If we just sort of remove all the objects in the scene, again, if you're not sure what's going on here, please do refer back to my earlier videos. So I'm just selecting all and deleting. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to Shift A, add a mesh, and if I add a cube in here, and I'm going to just scale that down on the Z axis. Okay, and I'm going to scale that out on the X and the Y, just like that. And that's, again, in terms of scene arrangement, when it comes to baked scenes, I would get really disciplined with the naming of everything. Like right now, you're probably just dropping cubes here, there, and center, and just leaving them as the word cube or cylinder or whatever. But start getting organized for this, because this is going to help you when we come to actually sort things out at the end. So I'm going to call this floor, okay? Well, actually, do you know what? Here, scratch that. I'm going to start with a plane. So mesh, plane, and the plane faces upwards. If I scale that outwards to a bit there, I'm going to call that floor. And the reason I'm doing that is just when you come to baking, you need to have your eye on the prize in terms of the amount of sides that are visible. So using a cube would actually give us 6 sides. And I don't want 6 sides, because if I'm generating a baked map of like 4K or whatever, that's giving up quite a lot of space in the resultant sort of the baked output, 2 sides that I actually don't care about. So yeah, I'm just going to turn on backface culling. And why do I do that? It's because when I import this into a game engine, I care about the sides that I can actually see. Okay, I'm just going to select all the sides. Clearly that wasn't working with a loop cap. So if I just click each side individually and then try extruding. Oh, no, come on. Let's just do S3. If I say extrude edges. Okay, but just, you can see an option there, extrude edges. And then if I just pull that upwards, you can see it's actually pulling the edges up. I press Z just to lock it a little bit so it's straight up. And there we go. And you can see I've got a very simple sort of room going on here. There's no roof to it. It's just the walls. Okay. And a floor. That's great. So with that, I'm going to go into the materials tab down here. And you can see there's no material here. So I'm going to click new. And I'm going to call this material floor. I'm going to keep it the same as the mesh. It's not really important I do that, but it's naming the materials is important. That is going to be very, very important, okay? As is naming the meshes, and that will become obvious why later. But at least if I do the matching, I know what's what. So, okay, so that's the floor. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Shift and A, and I'm going to put in a cube. And I'm just going to move that up, like so. I'm probably going to just snap back to the floor if I can. So let's just turn on snapping and take that to vertex snapping. And then if I can just sort of take that sideways, G, Z, and then snap it to that vertex, that should just put that on the floor. And if I go above, I can sort of move this piece by grabbing it and putting it sort of here. Wonderful. Now I'm going to take another object, okay? And this is going to be, what should we do? Let's do a cylinder, I guess. Yeah, we'll do a cylinder. So again, if I just go to sideways view here, and I just sort of grab that and G it upwards. And I'm just going to use the old trick. I'm going to edit this cylinder. I'm going to select all the faces on the side, like so. So that's Shift and Alt and click. And then I press F3 and I say smooth, just to make it look a bit less blocky on the sides. That shade smooth. Sorry, I'm really in the way here. You can see. Shade smooth. There we go. And voila. So that should now have made that smoother on the sides. I don't want to obviously shade smooth the top and the bottom. That would look very odd. So, and now I'm just going to go upwards and I'm going to just G and drag that over here. So everything is fine. One piece of advice I would give you with baking, it does overcomplicate things a little. But if you have faces that you just don't need, take them out. Like this one is on the floor. I don't need it. And the reason is that when we go to baking, it's going to bake every single side and everything to a portion of the graphic. So the less faces we have, the more room everything else has. So your bake's going to look a whole lot better. So I say delete faces on that. That's great. You can see I've now got a see-through cylinder of hair on the bottom, but you can't see at ground level actually see through it. So I'm going to do the same with the cube as well. Because we just don't need that bottom face. So if I just press tab there. Yeah, great. Okay, wonderful. So that is adding some objects. Now we're going to move on to adding a point light. So to do that, we press Shift A, and then we work our way down to light. And here we go with the point light. You can add a sunlight if you want, or a spotlight. Those also work well, but for now, we're just going to worry about a singular point light. And I'm going to grab that up here and drop it here. Now, I'm just, I was going to do this later, but I need to do it here. I'm going to say, using Blender's quick render to preview the lighting, I'm just going to put this in here. Yeah, okay. So if I click on this little button just at the top here, you can see it's this one here. Oops, there you go. This button up here switches us across to basically like a quick preview. Now, I'm going to have to sort of look in on this, okay? Because obviously when I switch to this, I can see my back faces in it. There is a way to turn that off in the rendering engine, but we're not. I've done that on a previous thing. We'll cover that just here. So you can see that point light is very, very weak. So if I click on this point light, you can just about see the walls and you can just about see where you can't see the grid there. But I actually want to make this light stronger. So if I click on this point light, and then over here, there's a little light bulb. Just click on this bit here. And that actually gives me my lighting panels. I'm going to pull this out just a little bit in case you can see it. Now if I change the power on this, watch what happens. Just gonna, I click and drag to the side, and that makes the power of the light get way more. And now we can see some of those real-time shadows being drawn as well, where the light is actually hitting the object. And just for funsies, I'm also going to maybe turn the light just a little bit with different colours. So you can actually use the colour selector here to really set the light that you want. So let's go for a really nice sort of but yeah, what we do, we go for green, do we go for blue? Let's go for a really nice sort of, in here, right? Really nice blue. There we go. And what I'm going to do as well, I haven't named these from a cube and cylinder because I'm actually, they are kind of cubey and cylindry. What I'm going to do, I'm going to just this box actually. If I just move this across here, I'm going to quickly go in here. I'm going to select one face, okay? And I'm going to select, oops, the other face, okay? And then I'm gonna press I to inset faces on either side. I'm gonna drag it into about there. And then I'm gonna press F3 and I'm gonna use a trick called bridge edge loop. So again, if I just move out the way a sec over here, you can see there bridge edge loops. So the effect of running that on this geometry is it cuts a nice hole in it. It's not just simply like deleting the faces, which leaves everything else as a vacuum. It's created a nice sort of tunnel through my cube. Now, a lot of people will use Boolean for that, but honestly, Booleans, as I've said before, Booleans use solver logic, which can create strange behaviors in your meshes. And they are very useful in many cases, but always try and prefer to do exact work on the topology rather than resorting to Boolean if it can be avoided. So you can see now I'm turning this box. Look at that curious effect it's having on the shadow because it's got a hole in it. So if I have a little look there, you can actually see that line being drawn on there. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a simple emissive material. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to just have a look at this. I'm going to add, first of all, materials to the cube. So I'm going to say, new, with the cube selected there, obviously. So hit the new button in this materials section. And then I'm going to name it cube. So again, keep these things simple. Avoid the words baked or unlit in your material types. There's a reason for that, and I'll tell you later. You're welcome in that. But just keep your name simple, okay? It'll go a long way. So avoid sort of underscores or spaces if you can. In fact, no, definitely do avoid spaces and underscores and any funny characters. Just go with alphabets and maybe I guess numbers possibly. So this is cylinder, okay? Oops, sorry, I was not concentrating there. Cylinder, wonderful, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add an emissive material to our cylinder. So even though our base material is this, we're going to add another material in here. So we're actually doubling up on materials on one object. And then I hit new, and I'm going to call it emissive. I'm just going to call it emissive, to be honest. That'll do. So what I do now with the emissive, I'll come back to that actually. If I press tab on this object, that takes me into edit mode, and then I can put maybe a loop cut in here, okay? I'm going to drop that loop cut there, and actually I'm going to press G and move it down on the Z. So if I lock it to Z by pressing Z, I've got a nice little loop cut just here. And what I'm going to do, I'll just zoom in a little. Oops. I'm going to select, if I switch back to face mode at the top, I'm going to select these, okay? And then I'm going to say, if I click on emissive, I hit the assign button here. I'm assigning the emissive just to these selected surfaces. Now, it looks the same right now, but watch what happens. With emissive selected, I'm going to change the base color to a yellow, I think, right? And that doesn't really do much apart from change the color of the material. And the material's being hit by a really nice sort of bloom light. So then what I do is I scroll down a little, and there's this thing called emission here. So if I click that to expand it, I can then set that to, I can set it to whatever I want, to be fair, but I'm going to set it to yellow. Now this is where it tells the 3D rendering engine, I want you to emit a yellow light, but I've got to adjust the strength. You can see that's currently 0. Let's set that to 1. Yeah, let's carry on. So that's our emissive material added there now. So what the emissive material should do is it should pass off its light to the surrounding area. Now I've probably set that too strong. But that's okay. We'll come back to that. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to organize my objects. So I'm going to, in here under collection, I'm going to create a new collection, probably at the top level. And I'm going to call it new collection. I'm going to call it unbaked. Now you don't have to do this, but this is just good for organization. So what I'll do is I'll take my actual objects, which are the cube, the cylinder, and the floor. I drag and drop them into unbaked. Okay, and that leaves me with my default collection up here, which I'm going to call lights. So lights in themselves aren't really baked. You don't bake textures onto lights, but they are used when the baking operation happens. Okay, so I think that scene is arranged now. I'm a little uncertain about how I've done the emissive there, but again, we'll come back to that and see what the result is. Okay, so if I now go into, oh yeah, Simple Bake. Sorry, a word about Simple Bake. So you're going to need to have Simple Bake installed. Again, there are some great videos that are made by the authors of Simple Bake, and if you go on their website, they will point you to how to install it. But in summary, I will cover that very, very lightweight. It is under, I believe, edit. If I go into preferences, then if I jump into add-ons. Yeah, so you can see that Simple Bake, oh, actually you can't see that right here. I'm sorry, but yeah, just make sure on your add-on screen you've got Simple Bake installed, default options, etc. It is updated fairly frequently actually, so make sure you are running on the newest version. Yeah, okay, cool. The other thing that I'd actually like you to do while you're in this Blender Preferences section is go down to the System section, okay? And in the System section, provided you've got your GPU, make sure you've got that sort of selected, okay? And you've got some options. You've got like CUDA and optics under there, okay? There is a bit of reading on the differences between CUDA and optics, but I'm not massively qualified to explain. I will, however, say that there are different types of scenes that work better with different render devices. So CUDA might work better for simpler scenes. You might get your results faster. But optics can work better for more complex scenes. That is my general takeaway with that. But again, I'm not an authority on that subject at this point. And so, yeah, do your reading on that. Hey, let me know if you know. I mean, drop a comment. By all means, I'm open to information always. So yeah, really, that's it in the Blender preferences. So once you've done that, you can sort of come out. And then once you've got Simple Bake added on, you'll notice under this render option just here over on the right, if you click on that, well, there's a whole load of stuff going on here. But if you sort of scroll down, you'll see like there's a section called Simple Bake, and it just says like Simple Bake is up to date. You can see that we're running version 1.98 here. Now, what I'm going to do quickly before we proceed is I'm going to make sure the default renders engine is Eevee. Now that's not going to work for us. We're doing a Cycles Bake today. Eevee, I believe, is a newer rendering engine. If you use that for Cycles Bake, I don't think it's going to go well, so I wouldn't use that. So just open this up and knock it down to Cycles. Okay, so you can see that when we selected Cycles, our rendering scene now, you can see the emissive light has suddenly lit up. So I was a little bit wobbly about that before, and that's just because by default I tend to go in and set it to Eevee straight away. Sorry, to cycle straight away from Eevee. So I was running around in circles. Anywho, that's a good pitfall. I should list that one. Make sure you're on Cycles. And then the other thing as well, really important when you're in here. So directly under Cycles, usually it says CPU. Well, as we just did, we set up the GPU. So let's flick across the GPU compute so it doesn't slam your CPU. So you see, CPUs are great for doing sort of one thing at a time. But for this kind of processing, this is where GPUs excel. I'll go into why in the common pitfalls later, but I'll just say abruptly that 7 hours to bake 3 objects or... So now we're in Cycles, guys. We are free to carry on. So let's go down to Simple Bake. So you can see by default, Simple Bake wants to do a PBR Bake, but we're going to say no, we don't want that today. That's going to be what we do next week. So we'll do the Cycles Bake today. You can see it's kind of changed some of the options like when I do that. Even the PBR Bake section disappears when I do that. So when I click on that, we get a few new options. So now we need to add the baked object. So again, you might not want to bake everything in your scene. This is the thing. So this is why I've kind of put things into an unbaked folder, just so I know I've got a selection of things that I can add. So if I go Settings presets we're not going to cover. There is some stuff in there that you can use to sort of save settings, but we are not going to be using that right now. We're going to come at this fresh. So I go into bake objects. I've got this sort of list just here. So what I can do is I can select my objects, my unbaked objects. Again, we don't care about the light. The light just does its thing. We don't need to bake it as such. And if we just hit this add button here, it adds our 3 objects into this bake object. This is very useful because you may not want to bake the entire scene every time. So it does give you a lot of control here. You can add and remove as you want. So that's wonderful. So now we've done that, we're going to have a little look down at the other options. So if I go into sample objects, okay, so what we want to do is we want to do a bake type combined, and that's important. Combined means we're, even though there's multiple bake passes, we are outputting them into just one texture. So yeah, keep all these defaults, okay? And keep all these defaults. Again, as your knowledge in this area grows, you may want to toggle these on and off. But the whole point is that it's doing all these different bake passes. And it's pulling them together. So it's pulling in the transmission, the emit, the diffuse, the direct and the indirect lighting. And all that is relevant to us. You know, if you do want to play around with these options, by all means do, and you can see the different results and get out. But as you're practicing, obviously you do this on lower resolutions so that you can at least see what the effects look like. So yeah, let's leave them as is, and then as we go down, what else do we do? So I think leave all those defaults. We go into texture settings. This is an important one, texture settings, okay? So this can drastically change how long it takes to do your bakes. So you've got little buttons here to sort of up and down and right. I generally, when I'm just messing around initially, I set the baking down to, in fact, let's just make this box a little bigger so you can kind of see. Let's take this down to 512 initially, okay, which is probably too low. It depends on the complexity of the scene, like what 1024. Yeah. Okay, so this section is really important. There is a difference between what you actually bake at, which is what you internally process in Blender at, and then what you actually output. For our intents and purposes, they're just going to match, to be honest. That's absolutely fine. So yeah, these what we're going to do on 1024 initially, okay? I sometimes do practice bake down to 512 if I'm doing a more complex scene. But honestly, the results that 512 produces are rubbish. So I wouldn't really go that low unless you mean to. 1024 is fine to just simple drafts, I guess. But really where you want to be for production ready is I would say 4K. But again, it does depend on the scene. And as we'll go into the textures, like how big those, how many objects those textures are covering. Because obviously if it's too low, it's going to look terrible on bigger surfaces. So, we'll leave it at 1024 for now. And the bake margin, again, you can adjust this if you get more any sort of like fluffy leakage in between some of the different UV maps. But generally, I mean, hey, leave it at 4px. There's a whole lot of settings in there. Is that even though they call it simple bake, there's a lot of adjustments in here that you can do. So what we're going to say, if we have a quick look through here, yeah, we'll leave the existing bake images before bake. That's useful. Export settings. I would personally turn on export bakes. Why? Because you need your output. Without that turned on, you're not going to actually see anything generated outside of it. So definitely do turn on export bakes under the export settings section. The next thing I would say, not have to do this, but I would advise to do it, is you export the mesh as well. Okay. Now, you can see that the subfolder here. So I've got this project saved into a folder. It's just on my C drive. it's a new folder that's in it, and it's going to create a subfolder below it called Simple Bake _ bakes, and we'll have a little look at that once we generate the first bake, which we're going to do very shortly. What else do we need? So we need keep internal images after export. Yes. Although, to be honest, I do go through the cleanup of the Blender file as well. Yeah, that's one you may want to play with in time. Could save you a bit of time, but I'm going to leave it on for now, just so we can see things. Now the exports, that format, yes, for Horizon Worlds, we do want an FBX. That is important, okay? And I'm going to say apply object modifiers, and also, yes, apply transformation. Again, you don't have to use these. They're just, if you understand what they mean, feel free to play with them. And then, sorry, we've got under here, a bit further down. Oh, mesh objects. I'm sorry, I missed something. So under here, combined mesh file. That's really important for what we're going to do, because we want to take a scene and actually export the scene, and the scene's going to consist of multiple meshes. Otherwise, we're going to be into the territory of having to line them all up in Horizons afterwards. We don't want to do that, not at this point anyway. So if I select combined mesh file, then let me have a little look. I think that's okay. Yeah. So we're gonna move on. File name. So you can just keep that as blend file name. That's absolutely right. It just keeps the same name of the blender. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, which again, this is just my personal workflow, is I'm actually going to tell it to create new UV maps. Now, when you are baking, generally the skill is to prearrange your sort of atlas textures. There are videos on doing that out there. I haven't covered atlas texturing myself, but yeah, feel free to look them up. However, you don't need to worry about that for the sake of this workflow. So you can just click this new UV maps, which will do it. And if we have a look at here, we've got just smart UV project atlas, which is fine. You know, that's gonna do the job. Let's have a little look. So we've got unwrapped margins again. We can toggle that, but we're not going to here. We're going to scroll down to, I think now, under other settings. So batch name, you'll see that appear in the output file name. Not another thing I need to worry about at this stage. I'm going to tick the button that says copy objects and apply bakes, because we're going to use that. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to hide the source objects after the bake. I want to keep everything in front of me. I don't want anything hidden. So that's important. And really that I believe is it. That's the setup. So if I just sort of, well, I think we're ready for our first bake. So let's do this. So, you can definitely see that the device is GPU compute, not CPU. I would, yeah. If that's CPU, be afraid. You don't want to do this on CPU. It'll take forever. Hours, and yeah, it's not a good idea. So anyway, let's do our first bake, guys. Okay, so we're gonna bake. You ready? Very exciting times. Let's do this. Okay, so here we are. I'm gonna hit that bake button now. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you can see that when we start baking, you've got all this stuff coming up in the background next. Common errors can happen that if you're in edit mode for some reason, like not object mode, as you see in the sort of the top of the screen, top left, we are in object mode. If you're in edit, it'll give you a warning. Also, I think stay in layout mode as well at the top. So these are sort of like the things up here. If you don't, it's going to give you some red flags and say, hey, what are you doing? With that. So yeah, you can kind of see what it's doing here. Ignore the trigger just drop in here. So where it talks about UDIM tiles, okay? So UDIM tiles. UDIM tiles are where your UV map existing goes outside of the bounds of the actual image text that you're using, so it creates like a tiled effect. So where you see UDIM, that's what it means. But yeah, here we go, we're baking. So I'm just going to sort of quickly remove myself out the way. So you can see just next to my feet, there's a little purple bar that's working away at the bottom. And that is one of the objects being baked. You can see an overall sort of progress just over here, I think. So you see it's 67 completes just over here. And that's Simple Bake. So Simple Bake is basically chaining up all these operations to happen together. Now, when you're doing normal baking, I don't think you have to do them one at a time. So that's one of the things, apart from all the other things that we've just been through, that's one of the things that Simple Bake does nicely. So again, like I said, keep your scenes like, because it takes a long time to bake. So this is doing a GPU bake. Yeah, you can see that we're on another texture bake. That little thing just by my foot has gone back down to 0, and it's working its way back up again. So what you'll see is inside the directory where you saved your project, you actually start to see under that Simple Bake Bakes directory that textures will start appearing. And in fact, I'll put a little screenshot of sort of what that might look like once I get my mouse pointer back. There we go. So what you'll be seeing is you are getting per mess, there'll be an image being output. Let's just track in how well that's doing a sec, so I'm standing completely in the way. So 16%. So we're baking three objects here, guys. So I think we are possibly on the last object now. Yeah. It does create a lot of working sort of elements. You can kind of see in the top right, you've got Simple Bake _working. That's just a temporary folder that contains sort of clones of our unbaked thing, and you can actually see it's currently working on floor at the moment. So presumably it's gone through tube and cylinder already. That's fine. This is a really simple way to do it. We haven't dealt with textures at this point yet, which isn't 3 sample textures, but we haven't actually mapped those yet. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start using those textures. Okay, so we've just come to the end of the baking cycle. So you'll see this window pops up and it'll tell you how many images it baked, no place, and how much time it took as well. So you see that simple 1K texture bake took 8 minutes. just to go a few objects, so you can kind of see what's going on there. Yeah. Okay, great. So that's a draft bake. Back to, I hope you're still with me. Okay, so if I just click OK on that now, and what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at what's happened. So it's created a folder with a bunch of images in it. And if I just sort of show you the naming conventions here, so in that Simple Bakes folder that's just above your actual Blender file now, as commanded in the preferences we set up earlier, you can actually see that you've got your bake tutorial FBX, which is basically all the objects that you just baked. So that's the cube, the cylinder, and the floor. They are basically all put together into one mesh, which is that bake tutorial 1.fbx or whatever you call the Blender file, but it uses the Blender file name obviously to output to that file. But you can also see that you've got 3 images that have been output, and they're not the best UV maps, to be honest. And you can enhance that. We might do that to the production mill. You can see the floor bake 1, for example. You can definitely see the yellow omission that's coming off the bottom of the cylinder onto that, and you can certainly see where it's a little bit lighter. You can kind of see where the walls and the floor are on that. So yeah, that's a draft bake, guys. And so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna treat this as a draft build as if we're gonna import it into Horizon Worlds. And so we're gonna go through the renaming stuff. Now this is very specific to Horizons. So we need to follow the same conventions that we covered in the advanced CMI tutorial. If you haven't seen that, there's a thumbnail of it. Go watch that. That does cover the full thing. However, and I will say that for this, we're only worried about unlit exports. So that's very, very easy to do. So what we have to do now is we're going to go into, another thing, you'll notice it's created this little folder here called Simple Bakes. And it's got copies of our objects. Now, it can't use the same names, of course, because in one Blender file you can't have two objects with exactly the same name. So it's put _bake in there, in our sort of output objects. I'm going to keep these, I think, called cube _bake. I'm okay with that. But the actual materials that they use, I'm going to have a quick look in here. But you can see it's created a copy of the same material, but it's called it cube _baked. It's the same name as the match, don't be confused by that. So for horizons, I'm going to rename that to Unlet. Okay, oops, I can't spell apparently. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to rename that one to cube unlets. I'm going to rename the cylinder. I've got another one. So cylinder _baked. I go into the materials for that. I'm going to double click and then rename that to cylinder _unlets. You'll notice I'm keeping the meshes called whatever they're called. Right, that's fine. But I'm renaming them the materials, the new materials that have been generated by the baking process, which link to the images, of course. I'm going to rename them to cube _baked, cylinder _baked. Sorry, as I'm doing that, I'm getting it wrong. I'm going to edit the material, okay, to _unlit instead. And that is a horizon specific. You need to do that, okay? Then the next thing I'm going to do is in the actual directory where I've got these files, I'm going to rename the cube _bake1 cycles bake combined to simply cube _b. And I'm going to do that for all the others, okay? All of the others. Because again, that is a horizons specific import constraint. Okay. Oops. So yeah, we've got cube _b, cylinder _b, and floor _b. And the last thing I'm going to do, now I've renamed all of these baked things. Now, of course, these baked things those UVs have been generated specific to these objects. So now I've renamed those materials. I need to re-export them, so I select them using a shift click. So this is just the things in the simple bake _bakes sort of folder in here. And if I say file, I export an FBX. Now what I need to do is in my directory, I need to go into the simple bake _bakes directory, okay, just above where the Blender file is. And in here, I just need to tick the selected objects flag at the right hand side. Okay, that's so important because we're not exporting the whole scene or just an active collection. We are exporting the objects that we literally have selected right now, just here. And then I'm gonna, in that bakes directory, I'm gonna overlay that FBX with this one. So if I hit the export FBX button down the bottom, we're done there. Okay, so we've now saved that FBX with the right naming conventions on the materials and then the right textures to accompany it. So the next thing we're going to do, guys, is we're going to upload it into Horizons. So join me in the next section. So now we are in Horizons desktop editor, guys, which is obviously out though for 21 countries. I believe it's accessible to people even outside the Meta Horizons creator program. What we need to do is to create a new scene if you haven't already got a scene set up. Then you need to, when you're in your scene editor, you need to basically find your way over to the assets section, which should be just down the bottom of the screen. Find a suitable folder where you want to upload your asset to. And then you need to, I think it's an add button, and you need to click add. and then 3D model. And then in there you need to select the FBX, so that's the bake tutorial FBX that we just output in that simple bake _bakes directory. And you also need to select the cube _b PNG, the cylinder _b PNG, and the floor _b PNG. So once you've got all this selected, just add them in there. Scroll down a little bit. This bit's kind of important. You need to untick the bit about offsets. That doesn't work with multiple meshes at the time of writing. And for some reason, every time you add a new object, it's always defaulted to on. That works well if you're uploading something with just one mesh in it. But in this example, we're uploading 3 meshes. So that's going to throw a warning if you leave that enabled. I'm just telling you it doesn't support multiple meshes. So once you've done that, hit the OK button, allow it to upload. And hopefully all should go through. If it doesn't go through and you get an error message, have a little look at that error message when you click on your asset with the little sort of warning or error symbol on it. It'll actually tell you in the right hand side when you click on it in the asset screen. It'll list all the problems. And if it's a failure with, for example, the textures aren't named correctly or the material names aren't named correctly, or it might say that you've got a PNG in there that doesn't map to a texture name, or you've got a material name, or you've got a material name in there that doesn't map to an expected texture name. It'll try and give you a hint in there, but again, if you're stuck, go and revise the advanced CMI materials video. Make sure in this case, is we're only dealing with unlit, make sure your materials in your exported FBX are _unlit. Make sure your files are _b and the PNGs obviously, and make sure when you named your materials you didn't put any funny characters in there like more underscores. When you name your materials you have to adhere to the guidance in the meta development documentation. Keep them simple, stick to letters, capitals, so put uppercase and lowercase if you must, probably advised actually, but yeah, just avoid any funny characters. That's going to give you some grief. So yeah, once you've uploaded that, you should be able to drag it into your scene and just walk around it. It's great. And you can even sort of put on the VR headset and go in there and walk around it. Now, because this is a draft build, it's not going to look very high resolution, okay? So that's where you do need to sort of go on to the next sections, which we'll talk through, doing a 4K build, which will look a lot better. Look absolutely amazing. What I will add in at this point actually is adding static lighting. So what you're going to need to do with static lighting is, because your model is unlit, the model you've just imported will not respond to static lighting or dynamic lighting or any scene in game, right? It's unlit. You've rendered your lighting, you've rendered your shadows already before even importing it, so it will not respond to it. But the players, on the other hand, will. It's really important. So if you put in an environment box and you set that to sort of like dark, I guess, and you can play around with that, but I always just set them to like skybox to start field, or just to completely black. And you'll notice when you do that, your model's not actually giving off any light to light the player, so you'll be absolutely pitch black where you're walking around, and that's because there's no actual lighting in your scene. So the way you combat that is to use the gizmo of static lighting, okay? And then you place those static lighting blocks where the lights in your scenes should be. And like I said, those static lights won't affect the scene, but they'll affect the player. So for example, if you have a blue light in the middle, you just drag and drop the blue light there. And if you have like a yellow light somewhere else, you drag and drop your yellow light there, set the sort of emission, strength, radius, whatever it is, intensity, to whatever it feels right. So you just bring in your character and walk around and just check, are they lighting up yellow and the next to a yellow where there should be a yellow light? Yes, great, move on. Blue, yes, fine. You just sort of carry on that way. And that's a bit of a magic trick, I guess. But when you're importing in these sorts of maps, you can definitely make the players appear to also light with the way the scene looks. So yeah, that's one very important mention. Okay, so we're going to move on to back to Blender, and we're going to talk about cleaning up between takes. So join me in the next section. Okay, welcome back to Blender for, I think, probably the last part of section 4, my method. So this is cleaning up between bakes. Now this is something that's essential. You might get into an absolute spin with it. There are options which can help you out with this in Simple Bake, but I'm going to just give you a quick primer on how to tidy this up. I would advise taking regular backups of your files in case you make a mistake, okay? Especially while you're learning. You don't want to accidentally delete the wrong things, so... Now, so you know what you're doing. Take backups, okay? Very important. So to go into the Blender file, there's this little option up here, which is display mode. And if I click on this, we can see that this opens up a whole lot of things. So the default view, like how we use Blender, how this little sort of thingy shows here with all these collections and objects, that is actually called the view layer. So we'll remember that because we're going to need to flick back to that shortly. But I want to remove all the previous bakes so that I can do a higher resolution bake. And so I'll show you just how to set up a 4K bake. But before we do that, let's get rid of everything else. Otherwise you can get some really odd results. So, and if I now go to the Blender file option just here, there we go. So the bits that we know that Simple Bake generated were materials. So if I go into materials, I scroll down, you can see all the materials in this Blender file. So I'm just going to pull this down so we've got a bit of the vantage point. You can see that all the materials that it created, okay, they were underscore, I think, baked at the time, but we renamed them to unlit. And funny enough, actually, this can also be used to sort of bulk edit things, but we're not going to cover that on this video. But what we're going to do is we're going to just select and control select and control select anything with unlit in it. Another thing you can do if it gets confusing once to start building up, you can use the search box at the top. So if I click on the search and type in unlit, it's actually going to show me, okay, it looks confusing at first, but have a little look here. So you've got this materials thing just here. So if I select these three, that's a shift select, I can then just delete. So I do that by right clicking and then say delete. Right, so that's now got rid of those baked objects. Don't forget to clear that search thing at the top. Okay, so you can see now we're back to our materials of cube, cylinder, a missive. Yeah, we haven't got any of the baked materials in there. That's the main takeaway I want you to sort of walk away with. So if I just close that materials up now, I'm also going to go into objects. Yeah, fine. So I can actually see, look, I've got my baked objects in here. So if I tick 1, 2, 3, make sure that's a shift click, okay? Sorry, a control click, not a shift click. So we're only selecting the ones that are baked in it. If you delete the others, you're going to delete your base model. You don't want to do that. So if I just again right click on this, be very careful, and I say sort of delete, that's now gone. So we're left with just our sources. And the last thing as well is images. So images obviously carry the textures that we've baked all that good stuff into. And you can see, look at our images. We've got these sort of cycles baked combined, which is fine. So again, if you did want to search for those in your file, because we know it's a combined, I can do an underscore combined, match me anything with underscore combined in it, and it just comes up with these images. So again, I can sort of shift, right click, and delete. Done. And that's kind of reset us back to now our current space. And if I jump back to view layer again, the great thing about that Blender file thing is it will show you all the stuff that might be hidden from you. It really just blew it right open, but it's the one that we tend to spend time is the view layer. So you can see we've gone back to here, and okay, you can also delete simple bake underscore baked here. We don't need that there, so if we just delete that, now we're back to our pre-baked state. And hopefully you haven't deleted anything you shouldn't. Like I say, if you just stick to those points of finding those given materials and images and meshes, then you're okay. So if I now just remember to save as you do this as well, I'm going to show you now how to up that to a 4K, but we might go for the import on that one. So the 4K is going to take a lot longer, so I just sort of move this up a bit here. And then I go into this render section here, this middle screen here, and I'm going to scroll down. So let's go into Simple Bake. So you see we've got all our Simple Bake options here again, as we saw before. Then we just go down to texture settings. So we've seen this section before. And we're currently on 1024. Now I'm going to use this box here to up and up and up. Okay, so that's now set to 4K. So 4K again is quite a nice general sort of thing to go for a production quality render. Again, as you get better at baking, you might find you're going to have to use different configurations for different circumstances. But for now, that's going to suit us. And then once you've done that, you simply just simply scroll down and then you just hit bake. Now, one thing I am also going to show you is assigning textures. Just briefly, I'm going to sort of zoom this in here at the end. So if I click on an object and go back to here, materials, then obviously with the floor, I can go into base color. I can go to image texture if I just move out of the way so you can see what I'm clicking. And so I'm sort of hitting that image texture item there. And if I just simply click here, I can sort of say open. And then that's going to pop open a little dialogue. Now for the floor, I think I'm on, but not already. If I just assign a texture of maybe plywood, I guess. Yeah, let's do plywood. So that's assigned a nice plywood texture. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into here. And I'm going to, by the way, actually leaving this in sort of render view can cause some instability when you're editing. So if you're ever doing some heavy duty stuff, just switch back to the next viewpoint shading option, which is just the basic texture view. So you can see already we've got some sort of UV nonsense we're going to have to tidy up. So first one, I'm just going to assign to this one. This is this cylinder. Now, here's a little trick. Use this as one cylinder and I've really got an emissive material assigned to this bit. If I just click on one of these faces and then I go up to select at the top, I select similar, I see select by material, that's going to select all the surfaces in this object that have that material. So what I can do here is I can say, okay, base color to image again. So we saw that last time. And I'm going to choose an image this time. When I go to open, this is going to be a texture called copper. Yeah, be able to assign that. Great. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say UV and maybe cylinder projection, I guess. And then that should make it look kind of okay. It's not that obvious right here, but it's done an okay job. I'm fine. I don't need to go into UV editing for that. Now I'm back in object mode. I'm going to click on this box here, which I probably should have done before. I'm going to hit tab. Basically select all. We know all the faces on this are plywood, so there's only one material in here. And if I just say UV, that's smart UV project. Let's try that and see what happens. We just say yeah and right. So that's okay. That works okay. And now we're gonna tile that a little bit actually, because I do want to tighten that up a bit. So if I go into UV editing, I select all. I use the scale. This is an example where we'll see Simple Bake can actually do tiled stuff as well. Interestingly, there is a disclaimer on the Simple Bake site. It says it does up to 10 what it calls UDIM tiles, so you can't go too crazy with scaling this out. Like when you get to a certain point, it's gonna hit failure. So try and be conservative with your tiling. So if I just do that, we see tiling, like think about the size of the image and the amount of times that image needs to repeat if you go off scale. But if I bring this across so I can just turn on texture view, you can actually see the effect that me scaling this has and this object. So if I scale that again, you can kind of see what's going on there. So I don't hit too tiled, but just a little bit like it. Okay, great. Let's come out of this UV screen then. I'm happy enough with that. And then last of all, we're just going to put a texture on this box. So base color. and we're going to say set that to an image texture. And then we're going to open. What are we going to have this time? We're going to have a texture, and it's going to be cardboard, I guess. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, the cardboard texture. And then I'm just going to quickly press tab and press K to select all faces. Again, if you're not in face mode, just remember to hit face mode at the top. There you can see UV. It's a smart UV project. You can do tube projection, whatever makes sense, to be honest. And looking at that, it's not. I mean, it's doing the inside of it as well. I suppose that's pretty cool. If I just hit save there, I'm going to come out of edit mode back into object, and then we're going to just run back into this viewport shading to sort of do a little cycles render on the fly, just to see how that looks. So, yeah, cool. Turn that way. Fine. And I'm going to do another bake now with that. So if I jump back to share. So again, for the sake of this video, I'm not doing a 4K bake. That would give a really great quality bake, but it's, yeah, it would take a little bit of time. I don't want to do that here, but by all means, hit 4K, go away, watch a couple movies, come back. Actually, on 3 objects, it's probably not that bad, but when you start scaling up to a few more objects, then you will notice that could be quite bad. So if I just, actually I could just be using the selector, but I'm going to type them in here. And then if I just save that, again, we've cleared out all our previous bake stuff. So if I sort of, if I was to bake that, that'll actually bake it with the textures, and it would still produce the same number of images as well. So that's a bit of bonus information for you. Okay. So in terms of common pitfalls, guys. So yeah, I've mentioned it a few times throughout this, and I'll mention it again. Make sure you're using the GPU, not the CPU. If you use the CPU, those bakes are going to take exponential amounts of time, and then it's just no point. If you go on GPU, use the GPU. If you do set up for GPU, keep an eye out for the warnings when you hit bake. It might pop up in the thing saying no GPU selected. Using CPU instead. At that point, just kill it. But the way to cancel bakes, actually, we saw the little thingy appearing down the bottom where it was saying it was baking individual things. Just down the bottom title bar with that bar, sorry, just in the bottom status bar with that bar that works its way across per object. You just hit the little X on that and it'll stop that baking in operation. You might have to sit there and do it a few times over and over again. I'm not aware of a better way to do it than that, other than obviously killing Blender. So do save before you start, save before you bake. Keeping backups, yeah, I have mentioned that before, especially when you're starting out. Do backups. Even before you bake. Like, you don't have to do it religiously, just be aware that even though this is relatively safe, the options that we're doing, I've taught you how to clean things up, and I hope that instruction's good enough. But yeah, there's nothing like if you really do screw something up, or accidentally delete the wrong object afterwards, having a fresh backup to go back to. So, other common pitfalls. So keep your preview renders like at 1024 or 512 or whatever. Just adjust to taste. Having a look how long it takes to actually produce those bakes. Because if you're baking as a preview on 2K and you get to the end of that and then you find it and it's rubbish, we've just wasted 20 minutes or an hour or whatever. And that's a pain in the ass. So if you can just drag it right down. You've also got this sort of real-time render view that we see behind me. That is also a thing. But I'll give you a good bit of feedback instantly on what the scene's going to look like when it bakes. Then also, yeah, not building production high enough resolution. So as you come to learn more about atlasing textures and combining them, you might find that you've got lots of individual small objects. You might want to join them into one nash. So you do that by selecting these multiple small items and then just hitting Control J, and it will combine them into one nash. That way, when it generates the new UV maps, as we specified in the options, it'll treat those as one mesh, it'll map them all to just one texture. You don't want a 4K texture for every single small object, so yeah. I'll give you an example. In the yoga studio, I think I have all the yoga mats that you see on the floor are chained to one texture, but they're just one mesh. I've grouped them all together because I didn't want a separate 4K texture per yoga mat. That would have been an absolute waste of space. It would have taken a lot of yeah, it would have been a very high resolution texture for absolutely no reason. So yeah, do watch out for that. Really, apart from that, I mean, good luck. I've shown you all I can to now, and the rest is trial and error down to you. If you do have any comments, as I said, or any sort of feedback, where if you're an experience, so the 3D designing is amazing, so please do drop a comment below. It'll help everyone. The next video I'm going to do will be on PBR Baking, which is entirely different from this. It also doesn't take anywhere near as long, and it is reactive to light. So that one I think is going to be far more popular. But this one can create absolutely gorgeous results. So by all means, and tune in next time. Yeah, see you later. Bye-bye.